What's happening, y'all? It's your boy Arrington. Welcome to Arrington's Most Interesting People. Look, on this episode, I had the opportunity to sit down with Jerry Stephanitsis. He's Director of Operations for Virginia Championship Wrestling, which is a semi-professional wrestling promotion based in the Hampton Roads, Virginia area. Now, growing up, I still am always a true wrestling fan. I had all the action figures, played the video games. I'm telling you, you couldn't put me away from the TV from watching professional wrestling. And it started to come back to me just as a kid. I'm watching wrestling right now. It's a huge multi-billion-dollar industry. And Jerry's such an awesome dude because he puts together local events within the area. I'm talking from 250 to 500 people watching these up-and-coming professional wrestlers. So this is how the conversation was, pretty much about semi-professional wrestling, the well-known figures that he's met in the past. He's worked alongside with Hall of Famers Ron Simmons, Ric Flair, Billy Gunn, Al Snow, you name it, all the top tier wrestlers that you're all familiar with, Jerry has worked alongside with them. So I hope y'all enjoy this great conversation I had with Mr. Jerry Stephanitsis, Director of Operations for Virginia Championship Wrestling, VCW, here on Arrington's Most Interesting People. Yo, what's going on, friends? Welcome to another great segment I call Arrington's Most Interesting People, where I get to have one-on-one conversations with some amazing and unique individuals, not only doing great things in their field, but also in the community. Next up, look, I have my good friend. He's Director of Operations for Virginia Championship Wrestling, Mr. Jerry Stephanitsis. Jerry! What's going on, sir?
How's it going, sir?
Going great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for making the time out your schedule, man.
Thanks.
Chat with your boy.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm so hyped to have you because not only are we both, I would say, huge wrestling fans, right? But we're entrepreneurs, business owners. We're putting together local events in the area. But I kind of want to let the people know a little bit about you. A little bit of background about Jerry.
Okay.
Doing that.
So I've been in the wrestling business for 19 years.
Wow.
It's a long time. I was 20 years old when I started. So I'm a graduate Norfolk Collegiate in Norfolk. Okay.
Nothing against you.
And Old Dominion. Old Dominion.
All the way.
Okay. And Old Dominion. Okay. And I've always been a wrestling fan. I think as long as I can remember. My father tells a story when I was a baby. I couldn't speak. And I was crying at the middle of the night. The only thing that put me to sleep was putting me in the rocking chair and putting Hillbilly Jim and King Kong Bundy on TV. That was the only thing. So, so it's kind of been a part of my life, that entire time.
Awesome,
yeah.
Man. And likewise, too, man, because growing up, wrestling was that was my main focus. All my action figures were wrestling, man. All my video games were, wrestling. I still am a huge fan. And, thanks to you, and I say that thanks to you because VCW is a great premier that is here in the local area. It's been in existence for since
1996.
96.
I was 12. Yeah, when VCW started. Yeah.
Wow.
It's been around. It's been around a very long time. There've been about three different promoters in that time. Too. Wow. And so, but it's been, I started in 2004, and I thought I was going to be a wrestler. And I found out very quickly I was not going to be a wrestler. It's not going to happen. So when did that wake up call come? Because when I did my tryout.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not pleasant. Back in that time, they were still kind of very guarded with the business. It was very guarded in the sense where they would bring you in and they would just beat you up just so you wouldn't come back. And that's basically what happened to me. I went in. It was me and a bunch of military guys. They're all in shape. I wasn't. And I was like, what am I doing here? We started with
first call right there.
300 squats is the first thing that they had us do. And then they're like, get in the ring and hit the ropes. And I went to run and my legs were like spaghetti. And I just, fell. And I had to get back up. I got sick. I went to the bathroom.
Wow.
And they one of our wrestlers who's still on our roster now, I don't want to say his name because I don't want to peel back the curtain too much. Mm-hmm. But he says to me, he comes to the bathroom where I'm laid out. And he goes, you told me this is your dream. Is this your dream? I go, yes, sir. He goes, you need to get back up and get back out there. And he walked away. Wow. And I said, oh, what the hell am I going to do now? I got to figure out what I'm going to do. So I pulled myself back up. I went back there. And he stops the class. And he goes, hey, are you going to get back in the ring? I said, I'm going to try. He goes, I want you all to take note here. He said he's going to try. He goes, that's what we want to see today. We want to see if we break you or are you going to come back? Because then I've learned since with wrestling, it's very important that you're on point all the time. Because if you are not, you can seriously injure somebody, cripple them.
Absolutely.
You know, you have to be like ready to, you know. So after the tryout, they were like, well, you know, the promoter is a friend of mine, Travis Bradshaw was a promoter. He goes, well, you know, we don't think you have a lot of athletic ability, but we'll find something for you to do. He goes, what else do you do? I go, I do videography. He goes, perfect. He goes, we'll have you do it. And that was my foot in the door.
Wow.
So that's how it started, yeah.
So and you're still doing videography?
I do. It's like that's my passion is to do the video, you know. And I've just kind of found my way into so many different facets of the business since then because I'm just interested by it. You know, my father was good friends with Lou Thez many years ago. He used to live in Norfolk, and he had a training school that was like 2 doors down from where my father's coffee shop still is. And so Lou would come over to the house. He would tell stories about wrestling. And Lou was a very, how do I say, a very old school. You know, I remember being a kid, the first time I met Lou, I was watching WWF and the Road Warriors came on TV.
Road Warriors.
And Lou walks in the house. My dad goes, Jerry, this is Lou Thez. I go to shake his hand. I said, I'm watching wrestling. And Lou looks at the TV and he goes like this and he goes, those aren't wrestlers, those are showmen. And he walks away. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I was
bring
like,
down the kids like,
yeah.
just like.
I was like 8 years old. I'm like, I don't know what that means, you know? And like now I've kind of learned as I got to know more about Lou, I get to understand like why he would say that, you know, because there's definitely a difference in the philosophy of like what work rate is versus what showmanship is. And like, you know, there's a lot of different nuance to that in wrestling. So,
well, you know what, man, what I love too is that I feel like our listeners and viewers are getting some notes when it came to you knew that, okay, being a pro wrestler wasn't your avenue, but you still had the passion. You say, I'm going to get my foot in the door one way or the other. And I think, too, people have to take notes on that because there's a lot of times where people get the door shut on because they might want to say, hey, look, I want to be this, I want to be that. But I never can get the opportunity for that. But what can help guide you to at least being in that field and also still find your calling? So I think that's very important and cool that is now led to a 19-year career working in professional wrestling. Now let's talk about what got you into VCW. Like how did that play?
So wrestling still to this day, but more so back then, was kind of like the mob. You have to know somebody to know somebody to know somebody. So, you know, I knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who knew the promoter. And so
it does sound like the mob.
That's how it felt. I mean, going in there. So I went to an autograph signing. It was actually an autograph signing for Ric Flair. And VCW was like passing out flyers, and I introduced myself to the promoter who knew I was coming because I had, you know, got this message through 3 other people, and then that's how I got set up. He goes, well, you know, come do this tryout, whatever, you know. The tryout I told you about went the way that it did, and then I was kind of off to the races from there, you know. And I've just kind of learned on the fly. I mean, I've learned from some very smart people. I've been doing it for a very long time. I've been very blessed with like. Being able to work with people I used to watch on television and having them actually give me advice and be like, you know, and not like nonsense advice. Sometimes guys like that, they'll give you nonsense advice because they don't want you to learn anything. And that's when you can tell the difference between somebody cares or doesn't care about what they're doing. But I've gotten some really good advice from some people and I've been able to use it, you know, to my advantage.
So Jerry, the last time we spoke, we talked about, you know, mentioned some known legends, Ric Flair, the Nature Boy. Who are some more like notable people that the public can say, wait a minute, they've graced VCW? Who are some of the, you know, wrestlers and performers you encountered?
Oh boy, Roddy Piper.
Wow.
We got to work with him. Jeff Jarrett. We got to work with Jeff Jarrett. Mick Foley.
Wow.
Scott Steiner. Yeah, you know, there've been many. And then we had a few that actually in the early stages of their career, they didn't necessarily start with us, but they worked for us young into their career.
Wow.
And you know, those are people like Luke Gallows, Mickey James,
from Richmond, I think.
She is, yeah. Sanjay Dutt.
Wow.
There've been quite a few. Joey Matthews and Christian York. Even I think the Hardys actually worked for VCW one time as well.
Get out of here.
But I'm going way back to like well before my time, right? But a lot of those people, you know, the North Carolina, Virginia circuit, you know, a lot of people came through that were like on the way up for sure. So when you have a company that's been around that many years, you're definitely going to have some of that.
Well, so look, when it comes to say the indie circus, right? I have a couple questions with that. For one, what separates, say, just for people that are just new to this conversation, the difference between like a VCW, a AEW, and a WWE? What's like the difference between those?
So Our independent is not as I hate to use the word scripted, but I'm going to use the word scripted. So it's not as when you're on television, you have to be down to the minute, know where you're going and what you're doing. You have to be counted down. You have to hit your marks. You have to come back from commercial break. It's what AEW and WWE do is incredible. Like I can't imagine having to produce a show like that. Ours is much more like an improv sort of event. If you ever go to like an improv comedy show or something, like, because we have our bullet points, we know what we want. Some of it is worked out and fine-tuned, but then there's a lot of it where you're just feeding off the crowd as well.
Gotcha.
And when you don't have those very strict TV timeout sort of elements to it, it allows you to kind of improvise. So if the crowd is really into something, maybe it goes a little bit longer. You know what I mean? If the crowd is like not so much into it, maybe they change direction and do something totally different than what was talked about. You have that leeway kind of more so in what we do.
And I think people don't realize how more difficult that makes your job, really. Really, because it's like again, you on the independent circuit, what you see. The loyalty factor is like up here. Like, I mean, you have a huge loyalty factor. Everyone in the area loves, and if you haven't, please, you got to check out VCW's events that you guys put on. And how many events do y'all put on per year?
It's between like 7 and 10 events a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's something like the known popular like events that you put on? The
biggest one is the Liberty Lottery, which is every July. We've been doing that since 2007.
Wow.
And that tends to be our biggest. July is the event we get everybody out, and I don't know if it's because kids are out of school or whatever, but it's like it's always typically our biggest draw. And then at the end of the year we have Tidings of Destruction, which is a December event, and that's also usually a pretty big draw because it's Christmas time, like usually school being out of session, for a period of time. I think that helps us as well.
And I remember actually Liberty Lottery was one of the events where I got my co-hosts and brothers, Sirach and Cam. I'm like, hey, look, this is their first event, and they had a blast. I mean, it was at the Kroc Center, sold out. I mean, it was dope. It was dope. Another question I wanted to bring up on the indie circus, like what's the benefits on being a performer in the indie circus for someone that's trying to start their career?
I feel like, so it's like a double-edged sword, right? So if you're on the independents, you get to learn a lot of different styles in front of a lot of different crowds. But I feel like if your goal is to make it to the tippy top, sometimes that works against you because there's this perception that sometimes AEW tends to draw more from the independents than WWE as an example, right? WWE, they have their own training center. They tend to unteach you a lot of things you learn on the independents because they have their style that they want you to learn. That's yet another reason why they typically go after like professional athletes and try to teach them from scratch because they feel like it's easier to teach someone from scratch than it is to unteach somebody something they've been doing for a long period of time. I think the benefit of the independents really is the networking that you get to do. Because, the names we talked about before, the people that VCW we've worked with, when in my life would I ever be able to learn from those people or just watch those people work or be able to go up to them and say, hey, why did you do this and not this, and get that sort of, only on the independents can that happen. So.
And a lot of greats, a lot of legends have gave praise to the indie circus. Like I remember my first time, thanks to you, I had to interview one of my favorite wrestlers, Ron Simmons. The fact that I got to meet the man in person, it was funny because when I interviewed him, I was definitely stumbling in the beginning. I'm like, it's over. I'm like, I was so, because again, growing up, I remember him during the Nation of Domination years, the APA era. Him as the WCW. My grandparents had old clips of when he first won. He is a legend, still is, and a big guy in person. Like, dude, you're retired, but I'm a little scared. But it's just he had spoke on praising the indie circuit because again, you don't know when the next great is gonna come in. You're given a platform, you're given an opportunity, and then on top of that, allowing the public to see, hey, look, this is going on in your backyard. We're uplifted by the community. A lot of the fans interact with the performers, whether it's the heels or the good guys, which is extremely funny. And that kind of gives me to another question. Like, why do you think that professional wrestling is honestly, in my opinion, probably more popular than some of just the regular professional sports? Like people there's sellout arenas. You're selling out bigger arenas than, the average football stadium. So why do you think it's so
So, as someone who's been a lifelong fan, I've experienced wrestling when it was at the peak of its popularity, which I really still believe was the late '90s. I don't think it may one day get to be that pop. Maybe today it's that popular, and I just am out of the loop. And I've also experienced when it was at like its lowest point, which was like the early to mid '90s, where like people would come up to me and be like, "Why do you watch that wrestling stuff?" You know, like, it's hokey. Oh, it's this. You know, whatever.
I can't stand people.
Yeah, I think that wrestling, since the '80s, since Vince McMahon came out and said, "What we do is entertainment. It's sports entertainment." The general public's opinion has slowly changed over time because you have that old generation of fans that were like, "No, it's real." They were like, "That's a real. It's like boxing. It's like MMA," which I could argue about those being rigged as well if I wanted to. But like, you know, but people, oh no, they wanted to believe it so badly. When they found out it wasn't, they lost interest. You know, they felt embarrassed in a way, right? Because they'd been beating that drum for so long, you know?
Right.
Now you have a whole generation of fans that have known since the onset, this is a show. You know, like, yes, there are real aspects to it. Yes, the contact can be real, and falling in that ring does not feel good. And, you know, but the outcomes are maybe predetermined, you know? But that doesn't mean you can't get lost in and enjoy yourself. And I think wrestling compared to other sports, at least for me, because I'm not like a sports guy, I'm a wrestling guy. When I watch wrestling, I know I'm going to take like an emotional roller coaster ride if it's done correctly. You know, they're going to really, you can watch a football game and it can be a complete blowout, and like you can just be like, you know what I mean, which is still kind of a different type of a roller coaster, right? People take, you know, if it's their team or not, you know. But it's like, you know, you can, because it's like a quote legitimate competition, like it's different than watching something that is strictly trying to entertain you.
Gotcha.
So I think it's like watching a movie. You know, the action scenes, people don't complain about the action scenes in Avengers or something. You know what I mean? People don't sit around and go, "Oh, that was," well, maybe they do with the CGI, but they're not like, "Oh, well, that was fake." You know, I don't watch fake stuff. You know,
I'm a Sharknado guy, so I always say, "Hey, that's some real stuff." But my producer Cam always says, "Dude, you're tripping." I'm like, fine. I got to talk about my good friend Benjamin Banks, one half of the Pink. Oh, I'm sorry, did I hit a nerve?
You called me your good friend, right?
You are.
Okay. Well, let me just tell you something. You can't be my good friend and be his good friend.
I can't have two good.
No, you can't do that. You have to choose. It's either or.
That's hard. I can't do that. Like now, maybe behind
this guy. Let me tell you about this idiot. So I used to manage him. I used to manage Benjamin Banks long time ago, right? And he had a lot of success under my wing. My tutelage, my intelligence. And then he thought, let me strike out on my own. And strike out is an appropriate term because that's all he did was strike out for a very long time until he got with Diamond Victor Griff, and they still struck out for a very long time. And then, you know that old saying, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. Well, finally they won tag team championship, and it didn't last very long. And they'll never win it again. Let me just say that too. It was a one and done. So my suggestion for Benjamin Banks, if he's listening right now, is that he should just probably give it up, hang it up, go to the Comic-Cons. He's got a great time dressing up like anime characters and going to Comic-Cons. He's got a whole second career in that. Wrestling is too dangerous of a sport. He's going to get hurt. He just needs to.
Well, Jerry, we're going a little too far with the personal attacks, don't you think? I mean,
how's that a personal attack? It's a fact. Does the guy not dress up like, anime characters but he's also do the stupid point thing at the that's all I ever see on his social media.
But he is, he has held the tag team titles. I mean, the fans love him. And let's be real, my guys and I, we were there at the Liberty Lottery when they lost it. I mean,
and they like I said,
was that a fair and square match?
Of course. What was wrong with that match?
Geez. Jerry, we're good friends. I'm not trying to indulge on a bad.
I didn't see anything bad in that match. I mean, it's look. The referee didn't see anything bad in that match. He didn't. Go back and watch the tape. Head over to VCW's YouTube channel. It's probably up there by now. So that's a good place to go.
That is true. Well, look. Like I said, Jerry, I don't want to end it off on a bad slate. Look, let's talk about VCW. What do you have going on, or like as far as how can people continue to tune into VCW and stay up to date with local events and all that good
Sure.
stuff.
So if you follow us on Facebook, that's like the mothership for reaching us, right? It's at VC Wrestling on Facebook. I mentioned the YouTube. It's at VCW Pro Wrestling. You can get us on Instagram as well, at official VCW. Those are the best ways. And then our website, vcwprowrestling.com, is really how you find out what the most recent events are going to be. Keep up with our schedule, and so we've got predominantly Norfolk is where we host out of, but we have a lot of other exciting cities coming up over the next few months.
Awesome.
We're looking forward to kind of expanding and doing some other things. So.
Awesome. Well, Jerry, again, I always thank you. When I have the time to get to talk with you. Thank you so much for making the time out of your busy schedule to come on the show. You're always invited, man. And hopefully, maybe I can have you and Benjamin on.
I was going to say, just don't invite him, okay? Don't invite him.
No. Okay. Well, I truly appreciate it. Jerry.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much again, y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed Arrington's Most Interesting People. Be sure to tune in for the next segments where I get to sit down with some amazing individuals, not only doing great things in their line of work, but also in the community. Take care.